Hi, this is Marlene, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Whether you're watching a video or listening to a podcast, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. Links to videos or MP3 files can be found on miamighostchronicles.com. Go to marlenepardo.com for information on new book releases. I narrate several podcast series that can be found on major podcast platforms and can also be listened to via Alexa, Sonos, and other home systems. Look for Supernatural Storytime for scary storytelling, Nightshade Diary for classic horror and adventure stories, Stories of the Supernatural for interviews with different guests on the show. If you want to get noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird, you can visit Strange Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com or find us on Blogspot. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi, everybody. This is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, Stories of the Supernatural. How's everybody doing? Good, I hope. Well, today is, we're in mid-October. Well, kind of mid-October here in North Florida. And I know a lot of you are telling me, so what's the update with the chickens? Yes, I've got all my chickens. And I've actually got, I'm back on the selling the fertilized eggs. I've got people around here who want to buy the fertilized eggs. And I decided, because a lot of people tell me, oh, you've got your chickens that go do their own thing. And, all of a sudden you've got little chicks. And you know what? I'm being real careful with that because now we're going to start going into the winter months. And as anybody knows, chicks, you need to keep them at a certain temperature. And I really don't want to pull out and, have a hen abandon a nest, which they've done to me before. And then I have to get the bulb and the box and the chicks. And it's great if you've done it. It's a gratifying experience, but I don't want to do that. So now I'm extra heavy duty patrol. No one authorized chicken mating, or not the mating part, but the hatching of eggs. So, and a lot of people had asked me, as far as the guineas that I had, I'd taken some of the eggs that the guinea hen had left behind and I stuck them under a broody hen, and nobody's hatched. So I want to be taking them out. I was hoping that they would have been staggered, but no. Yeah, it's one of those things. But anyway, and again, I want to remind everybody, it's October 7th right now, and I am going to be doing a live stream on Halloween evening at 7 p.m. Eastern time. I am going to be doing a live stream. And also, I've told people that if you sign up between now and October 31st for my newsletter, I will send you a PDF copy of my last book that I released on September 9th, which is a true crime anthology called Hot Dame on a Cold Slab. So if you sign up for my newsletter, which, by the way, my newsletters are short and they're interesting and they've got articles and related videos, stuff like that. And of course, every once in a while I'll release information about new book projects. But if true crime is your bag, baby, check it out, because the book is really good, I think. Not even though I wrote it, but no, it's very interesting. And if you're into that true crime pre-DNA thing where you actually had to do serious investigating, all these cases are true. And I think you're gonna like it if that's your thing. But anyway, and let me get on now to my sponsor. My sponsor is freethinkerprojects.com. Basically, what they do is they provide virtual mailboxes and mail forwarding. I know a lot of people, RV lifestyle, nomadic lifestyle, or somebody that needs to keep a residential address here in the state of Florida because they're Florida based. They can help you out. They either, they receive your mail for you, receive packages, they shred it or forward it, whatever you want. You want to come pick it up. Same thing. A lot of people nowadays are very hesitant about receiving packages at their homes because packages get stolen. They can help you out with that. They can receive packages for you. And again, you can go pick up the package at their location, or they can forward it to wherever you're at, especially if you're going to be away some time. There's other people that come sometimes from all over the world. They're going to come spend time in Florida and they need an address and they can help you out. They also have online notary services, which means that if you need to notarize any type of document, you can do it online. And lastly, they also provide registered, registered agent services. So if you have an existing corporation or LLC or planning to establish one in the state of Florida, you actually need a physical address in the state in order to do so. You can't use a PO box or one of these mailbox places, and they as far only $35 a year. That's a great rate for registered agent services. And what that does, if anybody doesn't understand, is not only do you use that address, they receive anything that the state sends you or anything, and then they let you know, hey, you received this. So basically, you're in compliance with what the state requires so you can establish a corporation in the state. Again, check them out. Freethinker Projects with an S at the end.com, freethinkerprojects.com. Okay. Now on to the good part. And this is the good part. The good part is my guest. And this is the first time that I've had this guest on. And I think this is going to be a super interesting. All my guests are interesting, but this, I think I'm like, oh, yay. This is a gentleman who, you know what, let's see how, I don't want to overwhelm him because I could like throw all these questions at him, but his name is Jim Girouard, and he's an artist. He has a lot of esoteric knowledge. He's a researcher. He has UFO stories, talks about the Atlantis monopole. He has information about alien abductions. And most interesting, he has something called the device code divination and palm reading. Okay, so much to talk about. But anyway, help me to welcome him. How are you doing today, Jim?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
On the contrary, it's my pleasure. I'm going to ask you what I asked. How did you get, how was your entry into this area of esoteric information? Was it research or something happened with you? What happened? What went on with that?
I was living in the Hare Krishna temple in Boston,
Mm-hmm.
2009. And my service was answering the phone and answering the door.
Okay.
And every now and then, someone would come in and start telling me that they had gone to see Amma, the hugging saint.
Okay.
So without really saying it, they were kind of suggesting that the reason they were going to see Amma, the hugging saint, was because when you go to the temple, the devotees in the temple are very busy. They have a tight schedule, and they don't always have time to personally intermingle with all the guests that come to the temple. So, it's basically focused on philosophy and spiritual knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who were going to see Amma, the hugging saint, were going there for the personal connection.
Okay.
Okay, so you can't have one without the other. You have to have personal connection and spiritual knowledge at the same time and kind of balance the two of them out.
Let me ask you, because I'm not familiar with this. When you say the hugging saint, was this like a living person that they considered a saint, or was this a,
Yes,
a person, right?
name is Amma, and
Okay.
she's known as the hugging saint.
Okay.
The way they do it is all the guests that go to her events, they all line up in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And she gives them each a hug.
I get it. I get it. And so you were linked in because of what you were doing there. So
Yes,
you were, okay, I get it. Yeah, very.
answering the door in a Hare Krishna temple is like the most important
It is.
service in the temple because you're the gateway between
Mm-hmm.
the priests and the swamis and the public. So the
Yeah, you're
feel
the gatekeeper.
exactly. So the feeling I got was what I was thinking was there's got to be some way that I can reach these people, uh, without religion, without temples, without books, without gurus, without anything at all. No money, no temples, no gurus, no books, nothing.
Okay.
And just reach them and get to them on a personal level and let them know that, there's someone out there that'll listen to them and connect with them on a personal level. And then afterwards, if they have questions about God or Krishna consciousness, then I can answer their questions. And that's how I went about it.
And what did you do? Did you write a book? How did you? And by the way, I understand exactly what you're describing, which is let me get them to what really they came here for without all the ways of getting there.
Yeah.
In other words, basically what you're doing is you're empowering the individual to
Yes.
find what it is that they're looking or what they came there for, whatever it might be for them. In other words,
Give them the personal connection.
right, exactly. Which is very important. I want to throw my 2 cents worth in here because a lot of times we externalize what we're seeking when in reality we have it, but you go sometimes through different avenues. Um, so how did you go about this? What did you write the book or how
Well,
did you?
the books came later,
So
but what I'm describing to you is where the desire came from. That,
when
that's how the desire manifested, was by these people coming and saying that they were going to see Amma, the hugging saint, because,
mm-hmm,
like I said, the schedules of the devotees in the temple are so tight that they really don't have time. So I sort of branched out, from the traditional way that they uh, teach the philosophy, which is basically, you move into the temple and shave up your head, go out to the airport and sell Krishna books.
right, that's a typical Hare
Every
Krishna that people think of when they
right, everybody knows about the Hare Krishnas in the
mm,
airport. Okay, so
exactly.
now I had the desire. So
Mm-hmm,
what happened at that point was I found out about the Bible Code, which is a book.
mm-hmm,
A story in the Bible Code is about a timeline where nuclear war happened, and the survivors, 200 or 300 years later in our future, decided that they were going to travel back into time with 5 books and put them in the Bible. And the 5 books that they designed were letter encoded or encrypted um, codes that contain the Akashic records of all knowledge.
okay.
Okay, so what they did was they took these 5 books, they traveled back into the past, they inserted the 5 books into the Bible, and then somewhere along the line, some rabbi discovered that if he took every 50th letter, it spelled out the word Torah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so recognizing that there was a pattern there, years later, when the computers came into being, they could now run thousands of letters into a computer program. And you ask a question, let's say you put your name in, it'll tell you
Mm-hmm.
the town you were born in, the year, your parents' name, your brothers and sisters, who you got married to, how many children you had, how much money
Really?
you made, whether or not you were famous, and how long you lived. It's all in there.
That's incredible. So I take it where it was inserted was into the Old Testament part of the Bible. Is that correct? Like, are we talking here, or did
That's
they put it like how did they?
I never uh, I never found out if they put it in the Old Testament or the New Testament.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it's
Okay.
five books. They're in there today because once they were inserted, they stayed in.
Which was my next question. You mean they actually stayed there? I mean, because sometimes you hear these stories about throughout time, the different things have been removed or reworded, if you want to. Some things have
They're,
been lost in translation, etc.
they're still in the Bible. In fact, they're probably in the King James version.
The King James version.
Yeah,
And
that's the most popular.
when you heard it, Jim, what struck you about it? Did you actually what? You tried it out?
Not exactly. I came across a video where these researchers they were debunkers. They were trying to debunk
Okay.
a Bible code, prove it was a hoax. So what they did was they took Moby Dick and they ran it into a computer program and they asked questions, but they got all the same kind of answers from Moby Dick as you would get from the Bible. So what they were saying was that the Bible was a hoax because you can do it with any combination of letter sequences. So what I thought was they didn't prove the Bible code was a hoax. They proved that if you had thousands of letters, you could ask questions and get answers.
Right, exactly. But again, if you think about codes, certain codes follow certain rules. In other words, depending on how you set it up. But and I understand what you're saying. A computer is the one that can actually has how can I tell, to do it quickly,
Yes.
what you're telling it to look for or feed it whatever the program is. So what happened? You see these guys doing this with Moby Dick. So you said, I wonder if it works with these gospels. Let me ask you, did they ever tell you what was the purpose? Why did they insert them to begin with?
To prevent nuclear war.
Okay, it was prevention against. Okay, so in other words, of course they're in the future, so they have the basically they could see our history, and see that they want to avoid nuclear war. And how can I say, because I'm thinking, does it ever explain, is it how can I tell you, does it say do this, don't do that, or is it certain events? Does it tell about certain events that they should be avoided?
I'm not sure it's as black and white as that. I think what you're sort of pointing at is a kind of a personal perspective of this whole thing. And
right.
something like that is really unique to each person.
I understand now. So let me ask you, did you then move away from what you were doing with the Hare Krishnas when you went down this road?
No. See, what I'm saying is, my first part is the explanation of the desire.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the second part I'm getting into is where I got the idea to develop the divination method.
Okay.
Okay, so now I figured, well, I might as well use regular dice because dice have numbers on them.
Okay.
I could work out a code system to decode the number into a letter.
Okay.
Okay, so I had this idea about the number 5. So I head out onto the streets of Boston. I went to 5 stores,
Mm-hmm.
and the 5th store that I went to was a CVS, and they had a little package of 5 dice. And I thought, this must mean something. I'm thinking 5. I go to 5 stores and I find 5 dice.
Okay.
So then I take them back. I roll the dice 20 times. I get 100 letters, and I'm, translating the number into a letter, which was very time consuming.
Mm-hmm.
But on my very first reading, it said, ask Joe to aim a hot bid.
What was that again? Ask Joe to what?
Aim a hot bid.
Okay.
Okay, so I knew what that meant. Like
Okay.
J-O is kind of like a slang for, he's a good Joe.
Okay.
Okay, so Joe is a reference to a guy named Kevin.
All right.
Now, this guy Kevin was coming around the temple and he was talking to the devotees, and he was trying to get them to invest their money into a website where you can double your money.
Okay.
So that's where the hot bid comes in. Okay.
So in other words, it was speaking directly to something that was happening around you at that moment.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly right. So I got a hold of his phone number. I called him on the phone. I said, Kevin, you're not going to believe this. And the first thing he said to me was, I was just thinking about you.
Wow.
Okay, so I made the connection. I made a psychic connection on my first reading.
Okay.
Because I got this sentence and I knew it was him. I called him and he was thinking about me after I called him. So at that point, I realized I had a method, but it was
Okay.
very time consuming because, when you have to translate a number into a letter and there's 100-something letters.
So let me ask you, and I'm thinking of alphabet, 26 letters. Did you do it like 1A or was it more complex?
Yeah, it was like 1A, 2B, 3C.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Something like that. Okay, so then I thought, well, I need to get some Scrabble tiles because,
Yeah,
the Scrabble
exactly.
tiles would save me a lot of time and effort. So I went to a flea market to a friend of mine and I said to him, do you have Scrabble? And he said, no, I got Boggle. And he pulled it out. I'd never seen Boggle before. And the game Boggle at that time had 16 dice that had letters on it.
Okay.
So, I was like in seventh heaven.
So you're thinking, okay, I'll use these dice then.
Yep, I got 16 dice with letters on them. So I would throw the 16 dice about 8 times and get 100 and something letters and, write out my letter sequence. And, I was off and running. I had a method.
So and so forget Scrabble. You stayed with the Boggle as far as to let me ask you something, Jim. Do you think that has anything to do with the person throwing the dice, or is it going to work for anybody who's throwing the dice? Or is it, you see where I'm going
Well,
with that?
okay. The question you're asking is something that I want to bring up.
Okay.
Okay, this method that I invented, a lot of people who learn it, they think it's a hard method to learn, but it's not. It's actually quite easy to learn, but it's time consuming. And the reason
Okay.
it's time consuming is because the way that we think normally during the day is sort of like one dimensional.
Mm-hmm.
Like when people are introduced to this method, the first thing that comes to their mind is, am I going to get the girl? Or am I going to get the guy? Or am I going to
Yeah.
win the lottery? I'll get the car or the job or whatever. And this sort of one-dimensional thinking, these kind of questions don't work with this method because let's say, he wants to meet the girl. So he throws a dice and the reading says he wants to meet the girl.
Okay.
That's all it says. It doesn't say get on the Starbucks at 3 p.m. She's waiting for you. You know what I mean? It
So
doesn't work
is
like
it
that.
the, but in other words, what you're saying is that you have to ask either the right question or the right way, or
Yes. And that
okay.
took me 3 years to figure out.
Okay.
Uh, you know, I,
That's
I,
a lot of trial and error, I guess, huh?
well, the average American's attention span is about 5 seconds.
I believe it.
And, mine's no different.
No, it's too too much going on around us. We're overwhelmed with
You know,
incoming,
trapped,
messages
trapped,
and
trapped in these material bodies, living in a materialistic country. I mean,
well,
you know,
I understand. I'm a hypnotherapist, so I understand also how the subconscious mind works, and I get it lot more than a lot of people realize how much we're being inundated with all these messages beyond what we think we're seeing or hearing. Um, so in other words, you're saying it doesn't, it's not one of these things where, hey, you know how people want divination, and let's say they'll go to somebody who does a tarot for them because they believe this person can interpret it for me, what I'm asking. Basically, what you're saying is that a person can themselves do it if they want. They just have to look, ask the right way,
well,
or
I'm
or
kind
is
of
it
glad,
something that, sometimes you get not what you want but what you need? Is that how it works? What it tells you?
I'm kind of glad you brought this up because it's probably the most important part of this method in terms of learning it. I want to say this, that throwing the dice and putting words together in sentences is not the method. The
Okay.
method is going from one-dimensional thinking to multi-dimensional thinking.
Okay.
That's the part they don't get.
I was gonna. You took the words right out of my mouth. I said, "Oh boy, I could see where that could be a problem." Yeah,
Yeah,
because like you
we
said, most people have a question, or
yeah,
like, when am I gonna meet the? It's like, okay, give me the answer, right?
right. Give me the answer is how they approach it. I
All
mean,
right.
I'm no different than anybody else. It took me 3 years to figure out, I asked every stupid question you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
I asked everyone that you can think of because I was testing the method, testing
Let
it
me
out.
ask you: have you ever done it without asking a question? In other words, let it talk to you.
Oh yeah, all the time.
All right.
Okay,
And
so
the results
so
better or the same or
the results are good if you don't ask a question. And there's another way that I do it is I ask the question, what do I need to know next?
okay, very open ended.
So sometimes I like to ask the question, what does the mystery look like?
Okay. Okay, I can see that.
Yeah, so this way, not asking any questions or asking, what do I need to know next? You'll leave it wide open.
Mm-hmm.
So
Exactly. It's like let's not narrow it down to what. There's some people. It's like this is what I want or whatever. I guess when you what do you think is the source of these answers? Is it our subconscious? Is it other beings? Is it a source from within the source, the Akashic records, whatever? Where do you think it's being sourced from?
another great question. In consciousness, there are 3 or 4 levels of consciousness. Like we're in the awake state. Okay, so now you're dealing with your mind and your thoughts. And the saying goes that your mind is your best friend and your worst enemy. It's true.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But there's another area of the mind and consciousness called the subconscious.
Yes.
Now, the subconscious is sort of like the bridge between the awake state and the all-knowing mind, which is the Akashic records.
Okay.
Okay, so what you're doing, like in this dice method, you're bypassing the thinking mind completely, and now
Okay.
you're accessing the subconscious mind, which is your higher self, and your
Mm-hmm.
higher self is connected to the all-knowing mind, which is the Akashic records, and that's where it gets into like this other aspect of contacting higher, ascended masters and things like that.
Okay. Right. That's the bridge out.
Yes.
Okay. And
Okay. It's kind of hard to make a distinction between your higher self and these entities that come through and send you messages, but that this communication system is like one directional because you're not really communicating with them. You're asking them to come in and leave
mm-hmm.
a message. They're communicating with you.
Right.
Okay. But let's say you can address them.
Let me ask you, how would you know? Let's say you're down, because I can see where people like have a little bit of that skepticism in them, where they're saying, "Is this me or is this, let's say, an ascended master?" Do, what have you noticed? What would be the difference that you could say, "This is not me or in my subconscious mind or my higher self"?
You're
It's something
describing
altogether separate.
you're describing my dilemma.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
I mean, I go through all of the same sort of tumbleweed sort of thoughts and feelings that everybody else does that learns the method.
Right. Okay.
I'll give you an example. Like one
Perfect.
time, a friend of mine came over to visit me and he rolled the dice, and it said a raven on the fence, and they will get in touch with you.
Okay.
Okay, so he left. He jumped in his car. He started driving home. And halfway there, he called me on the phone and he said, "You're not going to believe this." He said, "I just drove by a raven on the fence and I got a text message from a group that I've been waiting to hear from."
Wow. Now see that's the part where, because people don't realize how much your subconscious, if you go by the subconscious mind, we're not talking here, it only holds what you know or heard of, but it cannot give you, if the source is just your subconscious mind, it cannot give you basically precognitive information as in what's going to happen. The only way you're going to get that through the, let's say in this case, the dice, is because it is linked to something outside of yourself, your subconscious mind. Because there's only
Right,
so much your subconscious mind knows.
right.
Okay. Even
That's
though
why
we
the
can guesstimate pretty good through our subconscious mind sometimes, something like that, yeah. I could see where it's like that. There's your proof right there.
I'll give you dozens of examples. Uh,
Wow.
the
He must have
answer,
been, hey, I'm going back for another
okay, the way
another
it
throw.
works, you want to bypass the thinking mind completely.
That's very difficult for people to do. Very difficult.
Yeah, but it's how it works with this method. And the
Right.
way that that happens is you have the dice in your hand, and when you
Mm-hmm.
throw them, you're releasing.
Okay.
Okay, by holding them in your hands, you're picking up your vibration.
Okay.
But now
Okay.
when you release them, this method is what I call fluid. So in other words, let's say tarot cards.
Mm-hmm.
Tarot cards are not fluid, they're fixed.
Yes, exactly.
Each card means something specific, but a letter has no meaning.
Unless you put it together with others and
Right. So when you have 5 rows of 26 dice, which is a total of 130, you can
mm-hmm.
come up with 50 to 100 words, and you can put together anywhere from 12 to 20 sentences.
Let me ask you, when you throw, how do you know what sequence you should, let's say, be writing it in? Or do you just take all the letters and then like an anagram try to like make it into a message?
I could spend a half hour explaining how putting
Right, but
what,
do you see where I'm going with this? Like if let's say you do that, it's
yeah,
like, okay, I've got these letters, but how do I know which one is the first letter? You know, how am I even I can see what you're saying as far as a real mind bender and the time, how much time you need to put into it to get that message. Wow.
I've been doing a
Has
reading
it
every,
ever told you something that even after X amount of time you were like super surprised with the
all the
information it
time.
gave you all the time?
You know, I'm not really that much of a believer in my own system. I'm more like a skeptic
Why is that?
because I just don't think it's going to happen.
Until it does?
Yeah, and then it does happen.
Okay. All
It's
right.
absolutely amazing to me because it's like you would think I was a believer in my own system, but I'm not. I'm a skeptic by nature. But
Let
I'm
me
open.
ask you, once
I'm open.
once you got on that, where did it lead? Was there other avenues that it led you to? That it, or did it ever tell you into this or read this or anything like that?
I've got 3 books on Amazon, and I could talk about this for hours.
What are your books about? What's the
All
titles
about
on them?
divination. The first one is Dice Code Divination. The second one,
Mm-hmm.
Rise of the New Mythic Leaders, and then the
Okay.
third one is very easy to read. It's called Journey into Eternity, and half the book is drawings that I did, and the rest of the book is just talking about what inner vision is and how you arrive at an inner vision sort of perspective rather than trying to figure it out what you think of mind in the awake state.
Wow. So has it ever this in all this time that you've used it, has it ever, is it only things relating to your person, or has it ever told you about something that's going to happen or an event that might not be, in other words, it's giving you a heads up? How's that?
Very few of the readings pertain to me.
Really?
Yeah.
What kind of what is it, what are the majority of them then
A lot, a
foretell
lot,
or
a lot of it is sort of like it. It kind of looks like advice about how to deal with everyday life and living in a
okay,
crazy world and things like that.
okay, okay,
Uh, there's predictions. All right, let me explain it this way. Let's
mm-hmm.
say you roll the dice and you get a dozen sentences and you don't know what it means. Okay, so what you want to do is memorize the sentences, and then maybe 3 days later it happens, and then you remember the reading as it happens, and then what happens is you go into like a deja vu kind of state,
Okay.
and the deja vu is a state of eternity.
Okay. How
There's
long
no,
do they usually take when they tell you something? Is it like a few days, a few hours? Does it happen usually pretty
uh,
soon?
it could be the next day, or it could be 3 days, or a week or 2 weeks. It really depends. Like when I went to Sedona, Arizona,
Mm-hmm.
Patrick sponsored me and set up a free lecture. And I asked the question, who am I going to meet when I give the lecture? And I got the name Christy.
Okay.
Okay, so when I gave my lecture, I stood out in the middle of the crowd and I said, "Is Christy here?" And the girl sitting directly in front of me was going like this. I'm Christy.
Wow.
That took 7 weeks. So it was
Okay.
7 weeks from the day I did the reading to the day that I met her, and she was right there. And so I said to her, "Well, I came here from Massachusetts to meet you."
And what did she say?
Totally blown away.
She
We,
must have
we
been like, did you tell her the story of how you had gotten her name?
Yes, and the day before, I was walking up to one of the mountain peaks. It was called Teacup, and I was walking up the sidewalk, and I stopped to look down at uh, uh, a snake skin that had been shedded. And
Okay.
as I was standing there on the sidewalk looking at the snake skin, her and her husband came down the road and drove by me. And she looked at me and she said to her husband, "I think I know that guy."
What? Hmm.
Okay, so then what
Wow.
happened was I handed her the dice and she did the 5 dice throws. And
Okay.
I wrote it out on a great big piece of cardboard with a black magic marker so that big letters so everybody could see it. So we got the words Aries, adopted, dragon, and Zorro. And she looked at that and
Okay.
she said, "My birth sign is Aries. I was adopted and I was born in the year of the dragon."
Are you kidding? Oh my God. That's incredible.
Then I said to her, "What does Zorro mean?" She said, "My husband dressed up as Zorro at a party."
Wow.
Okay, so
So there's
I took
this
the
was, in
reading.
other words, this was the Christie in other words,
It was
you had
her.
any doubts about maybe was it supposed to be another Christie? This is the Christie.
She was the one. Okay,
That-
so I took the reading and I turned around and I showed them the letters and kind of explained to them how it worked and stuff. And man, it was magical. It was like an explosion. They
So,
picked up on it, is what I'm saying.
and well, because I imagine in your books, do you explain to people how they could do it if they wanted to with getting a dice? Do you explain what it is or how to do it to begin with, or to gather what materials they need?
I don't think anybody believes I invented it.
Why?
Let,
Why
let,
do you think that?
let me explain some things to you. When they learn this method, they tweak it.
Mm-hmm.
They change the method,
Okay.
okay? Because they don't think that they can do it like I can. I mean, I can look at 130 letters and in 10 seconds I can run off a couple of sentences.
Okay.
I've been doing it so long, I can do it quickly.
Right. Exactly.
But they can't do it quickly. So what they do is they tweak it so that it makes it easier for them to get the letters and the sentences. But I'm not in favor of that because for one thing, what they're doing is they're they're weakening the system. It's less effective the way they're doing it. And the other thing is, they can't turn around and tell somebody I taught them the method because I didn't teach them the method that they tweaked.
And how would they, in other words, you're saying they're taking a shortcut, kind of,
Yeah, they're
to
tweaking
get,
it. But what they're doing is they're weakening the system. Okay? If the system is perfect, you can't improve on perfection.
that is so interesting. And
And
I know
that's why I'm saying I don't think they believe I invented it. I think what they're thinking is that I came up with an idea.
right. I see
And
what
so
you
they
mean.
come up with an idea and then they call me back or they write back to me and they say, hey, I'm not doing it your way, I'm doing it my way. And my way is,
Exactly.
their way is better for them. See what I'm saying? Like, let's say I showed you how to do the method and you did the
Mm-hmm.
method, you did the method like every single day, the same exact way. You
Okay.
can you can turn around and tell someone that you know that you learned my method because you're doing exactly the way I taught you.
Okay.
But if you tweak it, you have to say it's your
Yeah.
method.
Of course. Right. Right. You're. Yeah. You're right. You're tweaking with it. Do you think then that when people do that, what's the word? They're kind of like tweaking it to get the answer they want, or does it still work for them?
I think they're doing it to get the answer that they want more quickly and more easily.
Okay. All right.
But what they don't realize is that the method is not hard to learn, but you really have to do it once a day or once a week for months and years at a time. And the reason I say that is because we don't think multi-dimensionally.
Mm-hmm.
We think in
Right.
one-dimensional.
And you know what? And I know what you mean as far as that a lot of people are into that instant gratification, which is I need the answer right now, right away, yesterday. If not, forget it. Oh, you mean what? Months, weeks, years? What? No, forget that.
Get it immediately.
Yes. Uh-huh. And Jim, I see by some of the subject matters from your bio that you also have had, and I don't know if this is before, during, or after when you were doing this, encounters with UFOs.
I met Biddy Hill around 1977, and she took me to see a scout craft that was landed on railroad tracks.
What? You went to, okay, wait, hold on. Let me get ready for the story. This is 1977, and this person tells you, come with me. I'm gonna.
I'll show you a
And
flying saucer landed on
what did
railroad
you
tracks.
think, Jim?
I saw it.
Oh, so you went. Yeah, I'm like, okay, I'll go. What's the worst that can happen? There's nothing there.
Of course. Who would turn that up?
Of course. So when you get there, you're like, and I mean, what was it? Did it land on the tracks? What happened? It crashed. It was
It,
just landed.
it was already landed when we got there. It was landing there on a regular basis.
Wow. And was this the first time that this person had seen it, or did they know about it
Oh,
and that's why they knew
oh,
where to look for it?
well, you've heard of Betty Hill, right?
Yes.
Yeah, she was abducted with her husband in the early
Right,
60s.
right, right. And I'm thinking to myself, because I mean, I know that afterwards they had experiences, like that, but I never knew about this per se. Even though they were hypnotized and, a bunch of other things as far as the repressed memories, etc. But I
She,
never knew that after the fact.
she had a huge photograph of this scout craft on her mantle. It was a blow up of a picture she took of it. It had all its lights lit up, and you can see the saucer shape. It's
Hmm.
all lit up, and you can see the railroad tracks.
And how did she? Was she directed to find it, or how did she?
I think the way she came across it was, she was like the number one go-to person about
Mm-hmm.
UFOs, back in the early 60s. So
Right.
she must have been getting phone calls and letters and all kinds of things from hundreds of people at a time. And somebody could have just called her on the phone and said, "Hey, come on down to Route 16 and check this out."
Okay, I see. I get it now. I get it
So,
because I'm thinking, how did she like? Okay, so yeah, of course, yeah. People are, yeah. She's a go-to person, so she gets a lot of information dropped in her lap, and this turned out to be
yeah.
like,
So we pulled up on the railroad tracks with the car, and she looked out the window and she said, "Hey, fellas," So
okay,
this is like reality to her. To me, it was a big thrill and stuff.
I bet. How
I,
did it?
I
How were you feeling there? Were you like, should I stay here? Should I go? Like,
it was pretty exciting. To be with her. She was a famous person. See, the way that happened was I was with my girlfriend who lived in Manchester, New Hampshire, and we were driving back to Massachusetts, where I live. And she said, "What do you feel like doing?" And I said, "Let's go pick blueberries." And she said, "Let's go visit Betty Hill."
okay,
And in my back pocket, I had Betty Hill's address.
okay.
I
Now let
had
me
her.
ask you because it sounds like after being abducted, she had, for lack of a better word, she had made peace with it in the sense of she was not running away from, as far as how can I say, maybe like a PTSD moment, where that person is still, like I don't want anything to do with that, or I'm not going to go out there just on the off chance I could get abducted
Well,
again.
I can tell you a couple of things that might give you some insight into the kind of things that were on her mind at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I showed her a UFO magazine which had a photograph of what I understood to be not a hardware kind of a ship, but a living being. And I said to her, "This is not a hardware ship. It's a living being." And she said, "No, they're all hardware."
Really?
And then one time she was kind of looking up at the ceiling and just kind of like talking out loud.
Uh-huh.
And she said, "Who knows why they're here? Maybe they came here to eat us."
Oh, that's pretty comforting there. That's like that Twilight Zone episode, serve
Yeah,
humanity,
I mean,
serve mankind, or whatever.
yeah, I mean,
That
like I
that
said,
that didn't you think like, I hope you're wrong about that?
I don't like to argue with people.
No, I know, but so let me ask you: when you thought that the ship, you were thinking of what as far as a biomechanical ship, and she's telling you no.
Well, what I saw five lights, two on the top and three on the bottom.
Uh huh.
But judging from the shape of the way the lights were configured, I could tell it was a saucer shape.
Okay.
But I didn't directly see like shiny metal or anything like that.
I see. I understand now what you mean.
Like
Okay.
like it was dusk and the sun had just gone down.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, in other words, it sounds almost like despite her experience, there was still a lot of questions that she didn't know, despite what happened to her, as far as what they really wanted, I
Yeah,
guess.
I mean, late 70s. I mean, you can imagine, how much we knew back then and how much we know now. And then when the 80s came around, I got a hold of a book that talked about the Nazis building flying saucers, and
Right.
my interest went down the tubes at that point.
Why? Because it made you think what, that they weren't extraterrestrials or what?
Well, you know about George Adamski?
Yes.
Okay, the photographs he took with the three balls on the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
Nazi.
Oh God, Jim, boy, you know how to throw a curveball.
Yeah, they were Nazis.
But that, but you know what? Do you think then that from then we're talking what, we're talking what, 60 years, 70, 50? Do you think that they could have made all the advances that you see nowadays, that people report, these movements of these ships and things that it's like, as far as you know, there's nothing that we've ever produced that can do either the speed or that type of, you know, motion.
I'm starting to get the feeling we're going to do a half a dozen interviews.
Sure.
You
But
know what I'm saying?
it's one of those things where you don't know, um because sometimes, and back in, what was it, 2017, 2019, I forget, was when they did that little disclosure where they showed that little film with the ship going like this, like what the pilots uh
Yeah.
view of, and they're basically showing something that's moving in such a way that they're saying that we don't have the capabilities of. All right. And that's like, okay.
Okay. Did you ever hear of Dr. Joseph Farrell?
Yes.
He's a brilliant, brilliant
Yes.
guy. Absolutely
Yes.
brilliant. Got
Mm-hmm.
a photographic memory. And the guy's a walking dictionary of facts.
Yes.
He he said something very interesting. What he said was that when this whole UFO flap started happening in a big way, which was basically, Roswell, 1947, you know,
Mm-hmm.
Kenneth, all that whole thing that started in 1947. He said, starting from that day up until now, there's never been a shred of evidence that extraterrestrials are coming here from other planets.
Right. Except you're right. The only thing you have is people saying I had this experience, or I was abducted, or I was taken aboard a ship and I saw, or people having visuals of, because at the end of the day, UFO means unidentified flying object, but you really don't know what the source is. Are we talking an extraterrestrial source? Okay, or are we
Exactly.
talking man-made, as in from planet Earth source?
Yeah.
Because there's been a lot of, especially now that you do see some type of proof of people seeing something that it's like, okay, they're not making this up. But what is the source of it is basically what you're saying. We're not talking an ET source.
Okay. Just a few minutes ago, you mentioned this thing that we didn't have the technology.
Right.
Okay.
As far
So
as we
what
know.
happened? Okay. Let's say a flying saucer shows up. It's got the three balls on the bottom. It
Mm-hmm.
lands. The door opens up, and out comes, some girl with blonde hair and blue eyes, and she's talking German.
Wow.
Okay. So now you're thinking, well, she must have learned German in order to speak to me or to speak to someone that knows German. And you're
Right.
never going to in a million years that she was born in Germany and the Germans built flying saucers.
And then what? You mean that?
They all
Well,
got
because,
fooled. All these contactees in the 50s, they all got fooled by Nazis.
well, because this is the thing. Okay, you hear of Operation Paperclip, which is where basically, my understanding, that's not my forte. Basically they took the brain power that the Nazis had, all these scientists that were, and they brought them over here and they used them. Okay. And they, in other words, you're, even though you were supposed to be the enemy, we want to pick your brains, kind of thing. And if you're thinking, okay, they took that technology that they had already started developing and they extrapolated it and what, moved on with it. But I guess my question is, are you saying that the Nazis developed this pre end of the war?
Did you ever hear of William Bosley?
No.
There was an organization by the name of NIMZA. It's spelled
Okay.
NYMZA.
Okay.
It was established in 1850 in Germany, and they were
All
building
right.
flying machines in 1850.
Okay.
By the end of the 1800s, they had flying saucers. Okay. In 1936, the Germans confiscated a crashed UFO in the Black Forest. And not only did they reverse engineer it,
Okay, that's one of my next questions. So you're talking here that they actually have got a craft that was ET sourced, and they back engineered it. Is what?
Yeah, 1897 there was a flying saucer that crashed into a windmill in Aurora, Texas.
So, because see, this is the question I have sometimes when you hear about these theories about technology being a product of back engineered whatever, let's say the spaceship. I think to myself, if you really don't understand the technology, isn't it kind of also risky and dangerous when you're trying to back engineer something when you really don't understand how it works? I mean, you're kind of like got to be careful. You see where I'm going with that? Because everything, yeah, I've heard the theories, all these technological advances that we've done are a product of back engineering of contact with extraterrestrials, whatever they are. I don't, whether it's,
If I wanted to spend the rest of my life in jail, I'd go to Area 51.
Yeah, that's right. They don't let people out there, do they?
Yeah, but you might find out what you're doing, but you're going to wind up behind bars.
No, I know that they're very serious. I mean, I've heard of people that go out there like on the perimeters, but as soon as somebody goes out there close by, from what I understand, they've got an eye on you. It's like, good luck on that.
I want to tell you about a video I did about 7 years ago. Do you
Okay.
remember Billy Myers from Switzerland?
I'm sorry, what was, because you cut out a little bit on what? On who?
Billy Myers from Switzerland. He had one arm.
Yes.
Okay, the girl that stepped out of the flying saucer, her name was Samyasi.
Okay.
All right, 7 years ago, I put a video on YouTube and I was saying that Samyasi was actually Maria Orsic.
And what happened?
Maria Orsic was part of a Brill Society that was started in Austria in 1917. And all the girls had real long hair and they were channelers. And they were channeling the Aldebarans. And they were getting the instructions on how to build anti-gravity.
So what are you saying? Anti-aging also? I mean, if she's...
Yeah, they have anti-aging. But all right, here's what happened. In 1945, somebody passed a note to somebody else that said, we're all leaving.
Okay.
Okay, so now the assumption of what that note meant was that they were getting into the flying saucers. And Maria Orsic time traveled from 1945 to the 1970s and stepped out of a flying saucer and told Billy Myers her name was Samyasi and that she was a Pleiadian.
Okay. Now I understand. Because for a minute that was like, I'm thinking, I didn't even think about time travel. Honestly, I wasn't thinking of that.
Okay, so here's what happened.
Of course.
5 years after I did the video, Corey Good did a video saying that Samyasi was Maria Orsic.
Wow.
I was saying it 5 years earlier, but I'm nobody.
I know exactly what you mean. I know exactly what you mean.
Paid attention to me. I'm not famous, and nobody paid attention.
So in other words, yeah, she's not from the Pleiades. She's from planet Earth.
Well, she wasn't completely lying.
Okay.
Because she was not a Pleiadian herself, but the members of the spacecraft that she was with were Pleiadian.
Okay. Let me ask something. Jim, do you think that extraterrestrials, are they friendly towards us, not friendly towards us, or just don't really care?
Well, these are really good questions. I mean, we're going down a million rabbit holes.
I know. But pick your favorite. Let's go, and we'll go down that rabbit hole.
Depends on the person. Like if you listen to opinions,
Mm-hmm.
some people are absolutely convinced that they're all friendly, and then there's others that are absolutely convinced that this is like some kind of invasion and that they're taking
Mm-hmm.
over. I've got a book by it's called Walking Among Us, and I read the whole entire book looking for some kind of a clue, because I like to learn things. I'm kind of a knowledge junkie. And
Okay.
the whole entire book was about this girl, Rachel, and she's dealing with all these hybrids, which are half human, half alien. And she's
Mm-hmm.
teaching them how to live amongst humans. Like, they don't know why we use plates. They don't know how
Okay.
to turn on a television. They don't know why we use refrigerators. Okay? The whole entire
Okay.
book is all about this girl, Rachel, who's teaching them all these human habits and things that we do. Okay, so now my question is, how is it that this guy wrote this book? How does he know Rachel?
Right.
Where did he meet her?
If Rachel, right.
See what I'm saying is he's kind of like pushing the idea that they're taking over. They look just like us, but they're hybrids, and that because they look exactly like us, uh, if you met one of them and they have this faraway look in your eyes, you just think they're on drugs or they're stupid or whatever.
Right.
You would never suspect that they were hybrids. Okay. Now, if you look at this guy's videos, his interviews, this is
Mm-hmm.
another really interesting thing. It was David Jacobs. His last interview was 3 or 4 years ago. Okay. This guy knows something and he ain't saying it. And for some reason, he stopped being interviewed. I think for the same reason, because he knows exactly what's going on. In the book, he never said how he met Rachel. Okay, where's the connection between him and Rachel?
So do you think then that the version that we're getting about ETs is basically not really true, and then but there are extraterrestrials that have even basically if they've even produced hybrids of whatever they are and us.
One of the many aspects of who they are and where they come from is that they come from other planets. I'm absolutely certain of it. But now that we know for sure that flying saucers are being manufactured by several different countries, there's
Mm-hmm.
no way, there's no way of knowing what you're seeing. Like I
Okay.
said, the girl steps out of a flying saucer. She's got blonde hair and blue eyes, and she speaks German.
Well, because I've even heard the theory that because everybody says, okay, so what's the interest? Well, what is it about us? Why are we so special? And I mean, I've heard the theory that they need us for our genetic materials. In other words, that they're kind of like on the some reason they're sterilized or they're sterile and or very low reproductive rate, and they're
Yeah.
combining with us because we're our genetic materials is good. In other words, I've heard that
Um,
theory, which I don't know if it's accurate or not.
humans
Um,
humans are genetically the royalty of the universe.
that's a very interesting. Say more about that. Why do you think, or what leads you to believe that?
Well, humans have a combination of 22 different extraterrestrial races in their DNA.
Mm-hmm.
What Once the junk DNA opens up, it's the end of the game. The game comes to an end.
Okay.
There are
So do
some
you think
shows.
then that do
There
you
are
think
some
that it's
shows.
possible then that theory that part of our attraction is our genetic possibilities? How's that?
Oh, absolutely.
All right.
They're here to get a blood transfusion.
Okay.
Yeah, no doubt about it. they're here for the DNA.
Okay. Because I mean, I've heard, they want minerals from us. I mean, I've heard every version of why they're here, what they want from us. And the
Some,
genetic one to me makes more sense, kind
some of
of.
them just basically want to communicate with us or hang out with us. So, there's a million different reasons. I mean, uh, Elena Denon, she's got some of the best stories I've ever heard. And she's risen to a real height of popularity because, for one thing, she sounds totally real and sincere. Her stories are just absolutely amazing.
Okay. So, in other words, there's the real story, the real UFO story. Do you think that they travel through space as in like, light years, or are we talking and intradimensional travel?
Uh, Traveling, thousands of light years is extremely dangerous and difficult.
Mm-hmm.
You
Right.
know, they're going to bend and fold time and space instead and go through a wormhole or a
Right.
vortex, even a black hole. I think is kind of a portal. I've been
Right.
hearing things about black holes. Now they're saying that they're not as dangerous and deadly as they previously thought.
Right. You always heard they swallowed everything.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to go near one and find out.
Yeah, let's not test the theory. Is that what you're saying? oh,
Yeah,
oh, you're wrong about that one. Um, because you know, and I don't know if you've heard of this, where some people that track this, they'll say, hey, we've seen a correlation between UFO sightings and sightings of cryptids, for example. People that after a while, if they look, in a certain area, for example,
yeah.
and some people say, well, sometimes, in other words, that there's a link between one and the other. Do you think there is?
To
If
my
or do you believe
understanding,
in cryptids? Let's start.
several 100,000 years ago, there was a spacecraft that crash landed here on Earth, and had a bunch of Bigfoot that were prisoners on the craft,
Okay,
and they escaped. That's how the Bigfoot got here.
I'd never heard that. Oh, Jim, what
They,
this is? I'd never heard of that theory.
they
Oh,
kind of
wow.
kind of
So
explain.
basically, it's like it's almost like when you hear about the traveling circus once upon a time and has a wreck and all the animals get. This is what you're saying is the source for Bigfoot. That's very
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. Uh, Before I forget it, I wanted to show you some of the dice that have letters on them.
Yes. Oh, let me ask you, where do you get those from? For anybody that wants to know.
Okay, the way I do this is like I'm not too comfortable with strangers asking me to do readings. So what I have them
Okay.
do is send me two photos, one of each hand, and I'll do a palm reading. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Once once
Okay.
the lines on your palm is like the blueprint of who you are.
All right.
Okay, so when I do a palm reading, I get a really, really good idea about what they're like as a person.
Do you do dominant hand or both hands?
Left hand for a woman if she has a job and if she's supported by her family or her husband, the right hand. And it's
Okay.
right hand for a man that has a job, and left hand
Mm-hmm.
if his wife supports him or his mother or his family.
Interesting. I'm not even going to ask how that works, but okay.
Yeah, it's just something that happens in the science of palmistry.
Palmistry. Okay. Okay.
Okay, so once they send me the palm photos and I
All
do a
right.
reading, I usually don't send them the reading in an email. What I do is I talk to them on Skype or Zoom first
Mm-hmm.
because I like to deal with things on a personal level, and to me,
Okay.
email it's not very personal.
Right. I'm gonna put a link, but what where could they get a hold of you, Jim, if for
Uh,
anything, whether the books or the reading or whatever?
my email address is revelartist7 at Gmail.
Revelartist7 at gmail.com.
Yeah, it's REV, not B, but
B,
REVEL.
Revel Artist. Okay.
Revel. Revel means to celebrate.
Right, like in revelry. And so you don't have a website, and if anybody wants to get a hold of you, they just shoot you an email.
I have a page on Facebook.
Okay.
They can
Under
contact,
your personal name.
yeah, Jim Girouard. And if they want to get the dice, they can
Mm-hmm.
do the dice throws at home and send me the letters, and I'll decode the letters for them and then send them the reading. And the name of the dice is Campbell's Alphabet Dice Game.
Wow.
You know, like Campbell's Alphabet Soup?
Yes, 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 exactly. That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, wait, I haven't heard that in such a long time.
Yeah, okay.
Campbell's alphabet soup. Wow.
Yeah, it's same company.
And this what finally you found this was the best one of all the dice games that you came across that works the best?
Yeah, for $20, you get 36 dice, and you only use
Mm,
26 out of 36.
okay.
What you do is you take the 26 dice and throw them 5 times and write down the letters, and then send me the letters in an email, and I decode it and
Mm-hmm.
read them. But it starts off with a palm reading.
Yeah, so first you suggest they do the palm reading and then
Yeah,
go to because I imagine what the palm reading is more of an overview, and then if they want a specific, then they could do
yes, because the
uh,
palm reading,
uh
it's like
that's
it's like spending an hour with someone in person, looking at their palm.
of course. That
You
is
can
so
see
interesting.
your whole entire life. It's all there. It's like
Yeah,
it's
I know, I've heard that.
right on your hand. You know.
Exactly. Exactly. That's you know what? It's really funny because when I was a teenager, I was like almost 20. We were at a flea market. There was this couple of ladies that were walking around. They were, do the palm reading and but they were just going up to people. They were just and one of them come up to me, of course, and she was like, and I'm like, no. She looked at me real quick. She just, you're going to have 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. I'm like, oh, okay, thank you. And I walked off. I was there to shop. That's what I had. I did have 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl.
Yeah, that information is right here.
Yeah, exactly, right there. Exactly.
Yeah, that's where it is.
That's where she looked at it. But it was like, but when you're that age and you're not thinking about that, you're just thinking, ah. But that's incredible, Jim. I
Yeah,
want to thank you so much for joining me tonight. I'm like still, my head's going because I think we always have to be open to all possibilities. Uh, and believe me, I know the power of the subconscious. And as far as what you're saying, that in some cases it actually bridges out to take you into other levels or access other things beyond what you're capable of, as far as knowledge is inside of you. But that makes a lot of sense though, as far
yeah.
as
Mm.
even
I
when we
think
have flashes of intuition, if you want to call it that.
I think we covered a lot of good subjects.
Yes, we have. Well, you got to come back. Are you going to be working on any book, any new projects, anything coming up?
No books coming up. I'm writing a lot of songs lately.
You
I'm
are. You're a
Yeah,
songwriter.
yes. In fact, next week I'm getting some radio airplay with my brother, who's a disc jockey.
Wow. What kind of music do you play? Or what are your songs? I mean, you
Uh,
just do the lyrics and the music or just the lyrics?
I write the lyrics and I sing, and I play guitar, mandolin, sitar, keyboards, flute, and harmonica.
Wow. So so basically you're going to be playing your own everything. You're
Yeah. I sent you a bunch of songs and artwork a couple weeks ago.
yes, I have them there. Let me ask you, and was this something you've been doing all your life or or what happened with
No,
that? How did you?
about 2 years ago, I got myself an 8-track recorder, and I
Okay.
did a lot of some, I had to learn how to use it, and
Mm-hmm.
I had to learn how to play instruments and write songs as well. But 20, 30 years ago, I had an 8-track and one guitar, so all of my songs
Okay.
back then were just voice and guitar back then. But now you can hear drums, you can hear
Sure. Yeah,
violin,
you could put a lot. You could be like a one-man band kind of thing.
yeah, piano, bass, drums,
Mm-hmm.
lyrics. It sounds like a whole band.
Exactly. Exactly. That's incredible. Again, you got to come back. I'll be contacting you because, believe it or not, it's October. I'll be contacting you after the beginning of the year so you can come back for 2022, and maybe we'll do some predictions for the new year. What do you think?
Well, there's a
You
there's a
know,
lot of
after
records.
after after 2020 and 2021, all bets are off. Anything is possible.
Yeah, who knows?
It's been so crazy.
Yeah,
It's
it's
been
like,
so crazy. It's like, okay, everything is like everybody, that first that moment, I think everybody's a little bit over like that first shock. So I want to thank you so much, Jen. You have been absolutely wonderful to have on the show. You've been great.
all right, thanks, Marlene.
Take care. Bye-bye. Good luck to you.
All right, see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, wow. This has been great. I really enjoyed talking to him so much. Yes, he is so many things to think about, you know, because how can I say? I mean, there's stuff that we discussed there. I mean, I knew about because I was bio. We discussed what about the divination with the dice and everything. Even though I didn't understand exactly how he had come up with the theory. I mean, I know there's different ways of divination, and and that's so interesting because you know for example, let's say tarot. I'm going to go with the tarot. A lot of people will say, even if let's say you do a tarot spread for yourself, basically you're coming up with answers based on your subconscious mind talking to you, maybe giving you information that you think you don't know or don't remember, or telling you something that your conscious mind doesn't want to recognize. And then, of course, you will get into other tarot readings where somebody's doing it for somebody else, and they give information that there's no way the tarot reader could know what it was. But I do know a lot of people that do tarot spreads for themselves as a way to facilitate their subconscious mind talking to them. All right. Because believe me, the subconscious mind knows and understands a lot more than we could ever with our conscious minds. Especially when it's things things about ourselves. How's that? What's that saying? Everywhere you go, there you are. But that theory of the dices and being able to, you spend a lot of time figuring that out. I'll tell you that much. And also the palmistry, all these things. Like I said, where does our what we know of in our mind end, and then basically you're interpreting or understanding something that comes from another source. All right. And I know a lot of people say, well, you got to be careful. Yes, I do understand. You do have to be. And he himself admitted it, because when I asked him, I said, well, how do you know? Is it your subconscious mind or your higher self giving you that answer? Or are you basically communicating with an ascended master, for example? How do you know? And he himself is not sure. It's like, because let's face it, humans are great at fooling themselves. You'd be surprised, man. That imagination part. And I personally wouldn't ever want to do that. I wouldn't want to mislead myself. Some people would be happy to do that because they're thinking, oh, I'm communicating with an ascended master. But unless I knew conclusively that that's the case, I would always be very cautious because I wouldn't want to fool myself. Even if the information was good, it's like, okay, if I'm tapping into my inner higher self, which is basically helping me understand maybe how to figure out a problem, for example, great. I don't have a problem with that. But I know that the source is me. Okay. And I've just found maybe a method of getting that information. All right. As a matter of fact, I tell everybody, people go to therapists because they're thinking that the therapist is going to tell you what to do or what the answer is, and not a good therapist. What a good therapist does is help you find the answer yourself. You have the answer. By the way, and it's tailor-made. All right. Not, what works for one person might not work for another. Because again, you are the repository of all your memories and emotions and experiences and interpretations of things. And in therapy, basically, it's helping you talk and take you to that point where that solution is perfect for you because it's coming from you. But it's a process, things like that. So again, I was fascinated with the whole thing. I got to bring them back in the new year. And also what he was talking about. You know what? And this is not the first time that I have heard that. I'm not saying about the UFO extraterrestrial not existing per se. I'm not talking about that. But I have, when you read or listen to a lot of different sources where the portrayal that they've basically fed everybody about extraterrestrials, the ships, the this, the that, that a part of it is very manufactured. In other words, this is what's being given to us. And what we do with it, well, whether we develop some weird conspiracy, like, that there was a crash and they recovered a body and then they back engineered a lot of technology, or was that really it? Or was that a staged incident? Okay. I have heard of that before. And they've kept it running along all these years, all these decades. And then we get into, again, and I've mentioned before in other shows, when people have these sightings of all these crafts, everybody assumes we're talking an extraterrestrial origin because they're unusual. They're not like an airplane or what you normally think of as man-made. So people immediately think extraterrestrial. But then you go in the direction of, okay, well, how do you know that it's not man-made? Just because you're not aware of it doesn't mean that it is. It's a weird thing. Like, it really plays with your head because it makes you think, man, how much have we been, what's the word I'm looking for? Have we been manipulated, to tell people about this? And then you think, what's the purpose? And then, I mean, and he made a good point, like, pick your rabbit hole that you want to go down if you pursue any of these different theories or explanations, or even this thing that she's talked about, that he goes to see a flying saucer that's landed on a track with somebody that by then, Betty Hill and her husband were the ones that had that abduction scenario with, well, they didn't realize originally that they had gotten abducted till later on. And he goes out to accompany her, and basically they're looking at an extraterrestrial craft. I mean, just it's one of those things, like, you hear the answer, but it's like all it does is just fodder for more questions. Now that you said that, by the way, now I've got 10 questions that I didn't have before. But yeah, I'm not ruling it. I'm not putting that off the table that a portion of what we've been told about extraterrestrials and UFO, the accepted stuff, could be manufactured or packaged, how's that, for our consumption a certain way. Where, or the reason why, I'm out on that. I've heard different theories, and that's subject for another show, as far as why certain things are disclosed the way they are, things like that. And sometimes, everybody thinks, yeah. And I said, some things are really obvious about, how us as humans collectively, we can be manipulated. I mean, through movies, art, music, culture, you name it. I mean, there's a million ways to do that, because at some point, all these people that put these together, that's the idea behind it. They understand the human psyche. They understand psychologically how we work. So they understand how to proceed with it. Now, the reason why you would think, hopefully there's a reason, right? You would think. But most of us don't ever think of, well, let's say we see a movie or a commercial or whatever, even a magazine, when people were reading magazines, is there, how you remember that they used to say, oh, subliminals and things like that, that they're trying to drive a certain type of behavior. Nobody, I think, wants to think, man, are there people out there doing this? Whether it's a company that wants to market a product, or the government, or whatever. Most of us are like, man, why can't I just watch this and just enjoy it without worrying that I'm being manipulated on a psychological level? I mean, you could even certain beats in a song will put you in a hypnotic trance. As a matter of fact, a lot of those blockbuster movies that you see, their music, the certain cadence and beats, some of them will put you into a hypnotic state. You might be awake and watching. As a matter of fact, that's what pulls you into the movie, so that you're like, you're living it, you're there. A lot of us don't want to think, man, do I always have to overthink everything? But this thing with the UFOs and the this thing with the UFOs and the ETs and the explanations that we've been given, and how much of it is accurate, truthful, real, how much of it is manufactured, if it is. And I've said it before, how much do we really even know? If there are extraterrestrials, how much do we really truly know? We might know, we might guess, but maybe there is no great liaison between us and them. Even though, let's say if we go down that thing about, hey, that they've produced hybrid versions, they don't need our permission to do that. All they have to do is basically abduct somebody and, if you want to, and steal genetic material. Whether, they've taken eggs and sperm and basically grew a human, or, whatever they needed. Because you always think, even among, how there's some species that they can't procreate. How's that? Because they're just not genetically compatible. But then, of course, if there are extraterrestrials that have been able to arrive at this planet, maybe they have a way around that stuff. I don't know. Well, we got to bring Jim back. Anyway, guys, I hope you really like the show. I know I love speaking to Jim. And how can I say, in all of these things, I always think you always need to keep an open mind. Even if some of the things sometimes seem unusual. Let me tell you something. I want to think, if anything, the last 18 months or so have taught us is to just about anything is possible. Anything. Because a lot of us have had experiences that I think a lot of us 2 years ago would have said, no way, no, this is not going to happen. And here we are. The no way is yes way. So again, guys, thank you so much for being part of my audience. Don't forget, you can go to MiamiGhostChronicles.com. You can hook up to the podcast version of the book, of the show on a certain podcast platform, or if you want to listen to the actual podcast version on your browser or download the MP3 file without commercial interruption, you can do that too. There's links there to do that. And as a matter of fact, for the other podcast series that I narrate, come back next week, guys. I have a lot of interesting guests. A lot of interest. People that we've been here before, but also new guests. And I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. Take care.